3, 2, 1.
What?
Shyamalan for
Oh my God.
Hi, I'm Allison.
I'm Joe. Welcome to Queer Cinema Catchup, the podcast where we talk about movies
TV
and miscellaneous topics.
through a queer
Lens.
We do that because once upon a time when we were about 12 years old, we used to make movies together in the backyard. We were neighbors, very good friends. And then I had to move away. And we didn't see each other for years and years and years. Only to reunite as roommates in Los Angeles pursuing our movie-making dreams while both being queer.
Today we were talking about the new movie Trap, directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
You might be wondering, why are we discussing that on a Queer Cinema Catch-Up podcast? And the truth be told, it really has something to do with the queerness of the film. Think of
Maybe
that.
there's some queer characters.
There might be.
There's pop, music.
But the real reason we're including it is because M. Night Shyamalan was a bit of a muse for us, I would say. And we'll get into that a little bit later.
We're going to get into that later. You guys chill.
Right now, this is just the free-flowing part.
But we're about to abruptly crash into the structure part, aren't we?
Yeah. Kind of like the crash that happens in Signs that kills the mom.
But I'm having a hard time envisioning the mother getting crashed by a car. Could you use your hands to show me what that might look like?
Well, yes, I can. This is the car, this is the tree, and this is your mom. You were probably wondering what that's all about. I'm sure Joe will splice in an example.
See, this is your mom, this is the car. It rammed into her mom, and then it hit a tree, and she was between them both.
It's so funny when I look back at those videos. When you're that age, you don't feel so small. You know, you just feel very...
You're yourself, that's all you know.
It's kind of shocking. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was ever that little.
Yeah.
Even though I'm basically the same height.
Yeah.
I never really got very much taller.
Really? You grew, that was the tallest you got?
I mean, no. I'm obviously shorter there, but I don't feel like I got that much taller. Like, I basically became 5'5" at some point in time.
I believe it. At some point, you did become the height you are today.
So anyway, we are going to have a lot of fun with this one because we
Love M. Night.
kind of treat him like you would a sports team. A sports team that, kind of like the Cubs, that has lost, and then they win. And we kind of believe that's what's happening with M. Night. I mean,
Yeah.
he's had some goodish movies in the later years of his career, but not all of them. We're not fans of all of them. But we're always going to show up on opening night.
Always.
Trap is a 2024 American psychological thriller film, written, directed, and produced by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Josh Hartnett, Ariel Donahue, Salika Shyamalan, Haley Mills, and Allison Pill. Produced by Blinding Edge Pictures, the plot follows a serial killer evading a police blockade while attending a concert with his daughter.
I loved this movie. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed my movie-going experience. I was laughing the whole time. We were kind of discussing how you kind of go into an M. Night Shyamalan movie now anticipating that it's going to be a little more campy. Maybe it's not going to be the most, you know, this isn't like Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer filmmaking. It's an M. Night Shyamalan experience where you can just tell how much M. Night loves movies.
True.
And so, and this is where it's like tricky to like analyze it. But there's like quality bit there, but then there's like he's having fun. I feel like he's having fun, and that's like the most important part.
I agree. It was fun. I could tell they were having fun. He was having fun. Most of the theater was having fun. People broke into applause at the end of the movie. And I have to say, it's not because it was an Oscar-worthy movie. It's just because everybody was having a good old time and they wanted to express their positive feelings. And I also think, crucially, because of his backstory and the way he makes films, he's kind of the one who's in complete control. And I think it kind of shows, like, the movie, for better or worse, has his stamp all over it with maybe a few notes taken into account. And I don't know, I think that makes it kind of a special experience.
It does. And how great for him. Like, what a wonderful life to be able to do this. And also what's like important about this is it's a follow-up to kind of, it ties in this same summer. His other daughter, Shauna, comes out with, she directed The Watchers,
which was also featured on our podcast a few weeks back.
And I think it's really great that he's getting his daughters involved. I don't know how much immediately we want to get into the discussion of nepotism, but I think it's like, if your kids have an interest in pursuing entertainment and you've like broken into Hollywood that is already so hard to break into and kind of made a name for yourself, to grow, I feel so nervous saying this out loud. Like, in this industry, you need to have connections. Like, that's what you need. Mm-hmm. And if they just happen to be family connections, but you're still willing to work really hard to get to that level, yes, his daughters may have skipped some steps and be able to be part of things and have like a better vantage point than other people. But it's like, I think that this is like a stepping stone for Shauna and Salika, that they both have an interest in the arts, one for directing and the other for acting,
singing.
singing.
I think singing is her primary.
The acting element was kind of a surprise in this movie. We could talk about that more.
She was in it a lot.
She's a major character in this movie.
Specifically
major.
in like the climax. Well, I wouldn't even say I thought it was the climax. It was not. There was a lot
The
more
lead up to the
that.
climax. Yeah, it's just like not an easy industry to make it into. And so if you have this foundation and you have family that's like willing to work hard, why not give them an opportunity if you have the ability to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely talking about nepotism more broadly. I'm definitely in two minds about it because, of course, it is a little frustrating to hear about someone like snagging like a writer's assistant job on a hit show when they're 22 because of their connections, when so many people want that job and probably are qualified for that job. But yeah, I mean, it is an industry based on connections. And I think if you're willing to put in, I'm specifically thinking of Malia Obama, who one of her first jobs was to be a writer's assistant for the
TV show.
Yeah, what is
The
that?
Daily Show.
No, Donald Glover. She was a writer's assistant, or
for
maybe
Atlanta?
a writer. No, not for Atlanta, for his other show, Swarm.
I've never heard of this.
But I think Malia Obama perhaps wrote an episode or something along those lines. But at the same time, I feel like she and the Shyamalan women have done something very important in that they're not just stepping into this, like, committed to doing the small steps before you kind of get to the big steps. And I think both Ishana and Salika's music appeared in the TV show Servant. She's written music for some other smaller production as well. And then Ishana was a second AD on Servant, which is M. Night Shyamalan's TV show, and did a bunch of other things before having her first feature. So even though we might think, oh, they're in this big budget movie and that's their very first step they've taken, that's not true. They're working on their craft and trying to become better. And I think that's important to note as well. And I forget where I'm going with this. So yeah, I'm in two minds about it because part of me's a little bit jealous. Like, oh, I wish I had those entry-level opportunities so easily. But on the other hand, if you're given the opportunity and you're willing to work hard and improve, and also knowing that you're going to get the criticism that you are a Nepo baby, I feel like more power to you. Mm-hmm. And also, I want to read these very interesting quotes from M. Night and Salika on the creation of Trap. Okay, this is M. Night. The Salika in the movie, for some context, plays Lady Raven, who's a pop star in the vein of Taylor Swift. All the girls are so excited to go to this concert. That's kind of the premise. The serial killer's daughter is so thrilled to be going to this concert with her dad.
Just to get nitpicky, the energy of the crowd is Taylor Swift.
Yes.
But the performance artist herself is more
Agreed.
different.
Yeah, I agree. Apparently Salika, I think R&B is her major influence as a musician.
Okay.
So I think that perhaps is part of the difference.
Yeah.
And the costuming was more Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga, yeah, kind of like modern art, but then also be kind of like emo in a way, like having like Raven in your name title. Like I thought kind of more like.
Did you know that his home in Pennsylvania, I believe I saw, is called something like Ravenswood? So I think the word, and then he's very interested in ravens.
Okay.
M. Night, and I saw a comment that apparently he had an old website back in the 2000s before Lady in the Water came out, and when you would go on, all these ravens would appear.
Oh, cool.
So I think he has something, they love ravens.
Maybe. Did you look up in your research, did Salika, is that like going to be her real stage name is Lady Raven, or is that just for the movie?
I think so, because when you search her
music,
I think it's going to be Salika is her name, her stage name, not the full Salika Shyamalan. Kind of like a, Beyonce type.
Okay.
Yeah, she plays this pop star. The film came out of conversations that M. Night had with his daughter, the singer-songwriter Salika, about combining the concert and theatrical experience and devising an album for a narrative. Similar to how Prince wrote the titular album for the 1984 musical film Purple Rain, Shyamalan initially planned to let another filmmaker write the script and direct the film from his original idea for a thriller set at a concert before changing his mind and realizing he could make the film with Salika. I feel like that's a lie. Apparently, I didn't know this. Purple Rain is a musical film from 1984.
What did you not know?
I obviously know the album Purple Rain, but I didn't realize that there was a movie.
I love the music from Purple Rain.
Purple Rain.
Is that how it goes?
No, it's Purple Rain. Purple.
You're wearing purple. Did you know you're going to talk about this?
No. Maybe I subconsciously knew.
If someone's wearing purple, someone's going to die.
Is that part of the musical?
No.
Oh.
But it's like a book about set design.
But purple and lavender also are a queer color.
You don't have to justify wearing purple.
The movie was also inspired partially by Operation Flagship, which was
Should I know what that is?
It's a real sting operation where law enforcement arrested 101 wanted fugitives at a convention center, having invited them all there under the pretense of gifting them free NFL tickets and an opportunity to win an all-expense-paid trip to the Super Bowl.
They caught them all at the same time.
Yeah, it was organized by the U.S. Marshal Service and the Metropolitan Police Department in D.C. in 1985. They voluntarily went to the Washington Convention Center for a chance to win tickets for Super Bowl. There were 166 marshals and police officers involved. The operation has been hailed as one of the largest and most successful mass arrests of fugitives by the U.S. law enforcement.
Operation Flagship. So that's where M. Night got inspiration for this movie?
Supposedly. But then I was telling my mom I'm seeing this movie. My mom's like, I didn't even know there was a new M. Night movie, which when we get into our connection to M. Night, you'll be surprised to hear she didn't know. But she said that it was also inspired, or it sounded like Mr. Mercedes, which is a
Stephen King novel.
I looked it up, and apparently the bad guy in that movie actually plans to do something bad at a concert, and then the police figure out where he is and they go and get him. So it's a little bit different. But I do think like M. Night tapped into something. Big concert going experiences feel very of the moment.
Well, especially with the Eras tour
Yeah.
happening. And he probably wrote this
Around that time.
around because she's been touring for like 3 years now.
Yeah. All this to say.
I need a comment. You didn't used to say all of this to say until Torture Pose Department came out, and now you say it all the time.
I started to say it after Torture Post Department.
Yeah.
All of this to say.
Yes.
There's no way for me to refute this. It's your word against mine.
All of this to say.
All of this to say.
She says it a lot.
I hope you're okay, but you're the reason. Okay.
All right, Salika, let's move on.
So anyway, back to their quotes that I wanted to read, just about their experience working together, which will get us back to nepotism. I remember where we were. Don't worry, everybody.
Where are we right now? I'm lost.
Don't worry, I'm not lost.
But I am.
Oh, well, we were talking about
Please
nepotism.
take me with you. Don't leave me behind.
Okay, we're talking about nepotism, and you were saying how if you're a parent and you can give your child a leg up and help them become the artist that they're maybe meant to be, why wouldn't you do it? And so I just kind of want to read these quotes that I found that the two of them gave in an interview. This is what M. Night said about the creation of Lady Raven. I look at my daughters and think that as they're learning their craft and battling their demons, the one thing they're not compromising on is authenticity. They're teaching me that again. I think that as soon as you have success, you unconsciously want to be accepted. You might lose sight of yourself. I said, Salika, this is the situation. This is who I think this fictional character is. She feels this way to her audience. This is who loves her and why. Every time she said, I have another song, it would be like Christmas, and I couldn't wait to hear it. And every time I was in awe. I hope the audiences will feel that authenticity and magic from the music. Mm-hmm. And whether that's clouding his judgment because Salika maybe isn't the best or the strongest actress yet. I feel like there were moments where I bought her performance and moments where I didn't. But he really like believes in her.
Yeah.
And I find it so sweet. Even if, I mean, maybe that's wrong that because of that he has the money to give her a platform, but I like it.
Why not? Like, how wonderful that you get to create work with your children.
Yeah.
And that they have an interest in it and you're not forcing this upon them.
Yes, exactly.
So she seems to have like a genuine interest. And I like going to this movie, I looked at it like, as much as I was really excited to see Trap because it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, I was going in with a critical eye knowing that his daughter was starring as this like Lady Raven character. I did not know that she was going to be, as we hinted at, that she's going to be so involved later on. But I'd say like the performance, I was especially looking at it with a critical eye, and you and I both talked that she didn't quite, like you could kind of see the discomfort trying to like be this like
inhabit such a big
personality.
star.
But in terms of like the music itself, even with me like being, because I feel like I can be really critical with music, I feel like she pulled it off.
Yeah, they're catchy. Like I
The
still
songs
kind
were
of
like,
feel the beats.
there's like a catch and energy to it. And then also, and I'm sure we'll get into it too, in terms of like what they did with all the extras, learning Lady Raven's songs.
Yes.
And singing along to it in the crowd.
It felt like a concert, and the way we will talk about it a little bit. I mean, or should I just explain now, and then
Go for it.
I'll read Salika's quote.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can do that.
I have a good memory, but it's not one that's like linear. Like if we have a conversation, you ask me right after this, what do we talk about in order, and I'll be like, I feel like this happens all the time. You'll ask me to recount a story, and I'll
Well, I
be like,
just asked you to connect because I was lost where we were, and you like literally went beat by beat.
oh, maybe
where
I'm,
we were
maybe
with
I'm
the
better at that. I think, but I think my best.
You are good at like summarizing everything and being like, I can't catch you
Yeah,
up.
but I think my best memory quality is I might have forgotten something, and then it'll be like weeks later you'll say something, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like when we talked about this. It's like something like trigger something in my brain, and all of a sudden my brain will remember this random thing that it probably would have otherwise been lost, but I need the input.
That's where I come in.
But anyway, there was just a lot of interesting information online about how they pulled this off that made me also appreciate M. Night's craft as a filmmaker. And in particular, songs in the film were performed on stage as if it were a real concert, with extras having received the music beforehand to be able to sing along, and a videographer recording on stage material and projecting it onto the stadium screens in real time. So kind of like at a concert, or like at the Eras Tour, for example, depending on where you're sitting, you're either watching the stage or you can watch the big screens where you can see Taylor's face. It's the same thing was happening in real time as they were filming, so that the audience could feel like they were at a concert. They also knew all the words, singing along. And then Cora Cazares was the choreographer. The order of filming consisted of audience reactions with music playing, followed by Salika dancing and miming on stage. And then, after the extras went quiet, actors with dialogue with a beat track in the background to help actors maintain rhythm. Hartnett and Donahue screamed parts of their dialogue to match the intended noise levels of a concert.
Yeah, the cinematography of it, even the direction, like all just like superb filmmaking. And then the acting too, I feel like was really impressive with like Josh Hartnett.
Yeah.
And then his daughter, I forget, what's his daughter's name?
Ariel Donahue, who was only 13 years old at the time of filming. She was great.
How old is she now?
I don't know. How long does it take to make a movie? She's probably 14, 15.
You keep saying that, though, you're like, and she was 13.
I think it's so impressive.
Yeah.
We saw what I could do.
No, the part that kills you like 13 at the time. And then I'm like, how old is she now? Like, I'm confused, but she was 13
if you Google
at the
her
time.
now, it probably says she's like 15 or something.
She's 35 now, but she was 13 then. And that's impressive.
A lot of time has gone by.
I do notice in the beginning of the movie, there were a lot more of these cool, like, I don't know why, but I was thinking of like, there was a Kendrick Lamar music video where there's like this like camera that like did these like incredible like camera moves. And they were kind of like almost like snap shots where it was like, and it's really hard to do because you're like moving the camera, but then you have to like refocus on something else. And they were doing that a lot in the beginning of this movie. But then it almost kind of seemed like as the movie went on, I'm sure they did not shoot this linearly, but it seemed like they kind of like became less flashy in the cinematography. There was still some stuff. Like another shot that comes to mind is Salika.
Yeah.
When she's in the house and the camera's behind her head and you're kind of like following where she's like looking.
Yeah.
And I think that was like some impressive cinematography. Like there's like really creative shots. And I think again, just goes to show how much like M. Night really loves movies. Yes, it's the cinematographer that's coming up with these shots, but I think he's really, I'd imagine M. Night's kind of like pushing to do these really like bold,
I think so,
vantage point shots. Also, I thought this movie was really well edited too, like really impressive. And the editor's name is Noemi Preswork. I butchered that name, but it must be so challenging to like edit something with so many extras, with so many background characters. And I really feel like everything that was happening in the concert was really like flowing and moving. And also like the editing was like timed perfectly for like some really great comedic beats. Like something would be said, like I remember like Josh Hartnett was trying to decide if he was going to pull a fire alarm. And then you hear the audio of Haley Mills being like,
it's the profiler.
Serial killer, he will go in and he will try to find a way to create a distraction. And then Josh Hartnett's like, he had stolen a radio, so he's able to hear this. And Haley Mills says, he might try to do something like set a fire alarm. And then Josh Hartnett's like, oh, shit. And then just like immediately cuts to him back at the concert with his daughter. Like there's some like great like timed comedic beats. And I do think M. Night, I know we're going to talk about it, but he was leaning into the comedy.
Oh, he was.
And I love it. He knows his strengths.
Well, sometimes he does. In this film, he did. He talked about working with the editor specifically. Naomi started on Servant and then became the editor on Knock at the Cabin, another of M. Night's films. She has this thing that I look for, which is a combination of extreme intellect and extreme gut and instinct. I would also add something that Zayo, M. Night's cinematographer on this film, says: a singular perspective and unique accent on the way she thinks about things. She brings this very specific way of thinking, and she's a beast. She just works. I like to believe that I work harder than anybody, but I can't keep up with her. She just keeps on driving, and she's super fast. And so I think we're really kind of a great team.
Yeah, I think like the accent is a great word to use for the cinematographer and editor. Like I was mentioning, like the cinematographer, their camera moves were definitely an accent on the visuals. Yeah. And then the hard cuts that Naomi would do would be surprising, and I'd say also an accent to the editing style.
Yeah, that's a really cool way of phrasing it. Accent, I agree. I never really thought of. And then if you think about how an accent, you could all be saying the same words, right? The same sentence. I saw a cat, but different accents make it feel different. And
I saw a cat.
Whew, I saw a cat.
I saw cat.
None of these were accents. They were just different ways of emphasizing the sentence.
Oh wait, yeah. What's the accent?
Like a British or something like, you know what I mean? Like everybody's accent is different and I don't know, it adds a flavor to it. Circling back around, Salika and M. Night and their collaboration together and the nepotism of it all. I also wanted to read Salika's quote about working with her dad. What's interesting to me is that he tells such dark stories because I think he's such a positive person. You see that positivity in the context of these dark situations, and you know that he thinks the universe is good. It's a key through line in a lot of his movies, and I think this is another example of that. It's beautiful to watch. That makes me feel safe on set, and it makes a lot of people feel happy and joyous to be here. It's like we're living the dream. He feels that, and so we remember that every day. Also such a beautiful, heartwarming quote.
Yeah.
Like to me, and all of his movies do have that like emphasis on family or good prevailing over evil, and he is kind of, his dialogue's really earnest and sometimes it can be very corny. But there's something about that where he's juxtaposing these very dark, creepy things with something that's pure of heart.
Yeah.
That maybe speaks to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say he has a very pure heart when it comes to filmmaking. And there's like this earnestness behind everything. Even as he's like trying to get inside the head of a serial killer, he can't quite pull it off because I don't think he can envision what a serial killer actually goes through.
And making us feel sympathy for this evil man.
I never really felt empathy for him.
The dad-daughter storyline definitely worked on me. Well, like when she hugged him at the end, I was like, oh, even though you're awful.
Why'd they let him get...
I don't know, but I was happy. He deserved one more hug from his cute little daughter. And I feel like their quotes kind of dovetail nicely with one another because they both mentioned purity and authenticity. And so in his daughter, he's reminded of why he started making films in the first place, to be this kind of pure artistic endeavor and to not care about being liked, which was something a problem that maybe he dealt with once he was so commercially successful and he was successful on such a big level. And so to like look at his children and remember why he got involved, and then for his children to see him as this pure storyteller who just does this because it's his passion and what he has to do. Yeah. It's like they see in one another, they see themselves reflected back. It's beautiful.
It is.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they're making movies together. I think it's great.
Yeah.
And inspiring.
I agree.
We also started making movies together when we were young, and here we are making not a movie but a podcast.
So we love M. Night, and Allison had seen Signs first, and she came over to our house. We'd watch movies together often, and there was one night she recommended that we watch Signs, and we've talked about it before. I can't remember how it came about, but as soon as the movie was over, I don't know who decided, like, it's like, we have a video camera. Why don't we
make a movie?
Make Signs. Well, specifically, why don't we make Signs?
Now that I think about it, it is a weird... I mean, I think kids do recreate things that they like, but it is kind of a weird decision to make it scene by scene like that.
Yeah. And two, at that time, like, it's different now. It's like, to be, like, I think I was like 13, 14 when we did that. A lot of people had like camcorders where that's how you'd film home videos, whereas like nowadays it's like an iPhone. So it's like
anyone could do it.
Anyone can do it, but it's like there's something about like the camcorder where it's like I could film for long periods at a time. Whereas with an iPhone, you kind of film things in clips, I imagine. Like you don't film it for as long. And then also an iPhone's like connected to a person. So it's like if we try to do this in the modern day, let's say, and I like go to my dad, be like, Dad, can I use your iPhone to film a movie all day? He'd be like, well, no, I need my cell phone.
Or he'd be like, use your own.
Would I have a cell phone at 13?
Maybe not. That's such a good point, though, because I also think another element of that is, and one of the reasons we could do it at your house and not mine is I don't think my parents would have let me use their camcorder. Yeah. They'd be like, you're going to break this. No way. And so there's this element of this is something special. This is something a little forbidden. And we're using this equipment that kind of makes it feel even bigger and better to the mind of a child. Yeah. I definitely felt that way. Like we were doing something exciting and...
But it's so funny, like, in terms of like the filmmaking process of it, like I didn't understand the concept of like different shots. So it was very like cinema verite where it's literally I'm just like panning everywhere. There's no cuts anywhere. And it's like, I'm so curious, like what I thought a movie, and then I'm sure like watching it back, I'm like, it doesn't look like the movies I usually watch, but I didn't have like the language or understanding to capture a movie as I envisioned it.
Don't you think doing that at such a young age is what later on
enabled
you to be able, it's like you were learning in real time by actually doing it, and just out of that pure filmmaking love or desire to tell a story that Salika was talking about with her dad, who also, I think, by the way, made like 45 home videos when he was a child.
Yeah.
Movies.
I've seen a shot.
an
He was
extra
doing like an Indiana
special.
Jones recreation. M. Night was.
Yeah, I think it's on the DVD extras of one of his films.
Okay.
Another reason that M. Night feels personal to me is because he is from the area of Pennsylvania that I'm from. And so, and almost all of his films are set in the Philadelphia region, with the exception of Old. But even then, the main family is from that area. They make a point to say that. So we definitely feel like a personal tie to M. Night. I still remember my parents coming home from The Sixth Sense and talking about it. My dad was like, oh my gosh, that was such an amazing movie. The way he was using the color red to signify that the ghosts were near. It was so brilliant. And I won't tell you the twist, but oh, such a great film. I just really remember them being struck by it. And I felt very proud that he was from Philadelphia because I was living in Seattle. And that was my connection to my hometown, so to speak. So anyway, I feel very close to him in that way as a Philly girl.
And then it's special too is you've now lived in LA for 3 years now. And there's now been, this is the third M. Night movie that's come out, and so you and I both have seen these
one every
year. So Old, Knock at the Cabin, and now Trap. So it's like very special to be able to start watching these movies again when it's so closely tied to what made us get into the entertainment industry in the first place.
What would you say about Old?
It was good. I think before we saw the movie last night with my friends, I was like, there's two types of M. Night movies that I think can both be summed up by Old and Knock at the Cabin. Old and Knock at the Cabin are not necessarily good movies, but one is an enjoyable movie while the other is not enjoyable. And
True.
I'd say what makes Old so fun is just like, it's really campy and ridiculous and entertaining, and I'm never not bored. Whereas Knock at the Cabin kind of has some of the worst elements that M. Night can bring to his movies, where it's just like overly earnest, can be like a little boring, dry, and serious. And so going into Trap, I was like, I feel like it might be another one of these movies, but I hope it's much more Old than it is Knock at the Cabin. And it very much, in my opinion, was more Old than Knock at the Cabin. So that was great to see. And I really enjoyed it and I really loved it.
Couldn't agree more.
I don't know M. Night's filmography so in depth, but I know he had like Sixth Sense, Signs.
2004, The Village, which I remember seeing in the theater with my parents and being very scared. And then things begin to fall apart with 2006, The Lady in the Water, which, do you remember anything about Lady in the Water?
I'd say before that, though, The Village, I remember that coming out and people kind of were getting a little tired of M. Night's shtick
of the twist.
Where it's like, I mean, at least my opinion at the time was like, oh, this doesn't feel as strong as even like Signs did. It felt like he was like very much pressured and kind of like trapped in a way of delivering on a twist. So even today going into Trap, it's like, oh, what's the twist going to be? And all of us were trying to guess, and a lot of people were guessing that, you know, Josh Hartnett's actually not going to be the serial killer. We haven't talked about the trailer yet, but the trailer kind of just showcases that. It sets up the premise of Josh Hartnett being trapped in this stadium, and he's being surrounded by cops, and it turns out that's all a big trap to capture the serial killer that is him. So we know that. And so a lot of people are guessing like, oh, is the twist going to be, because he goes there with his daughter, is the daughter actually going to be the serial killer? And it's like a lot of people guess that. But then the twist on the twist is like, there's not really a twist at the end of the movie. And I'd say like,
there's two little twists, I'd say.
In Trap, Knock at the Cabin, and Old, none of them really have a twist to it.
Old had some kind of twist where something about the swimming underwater.
Well, they were like I think like the science of it all. The twist of it's you discover it's a whole science experiment.
Which really should have happened in the middle of the movie.
Old has my favorite, I'm like, Shyamalan cameo.
Oh my gosh. Oh. You have props? Joe. That was one of my favorite cameos, I'm not gonna lie.
What was his cameo in Knock at the Cabin?
Was he a newscaster? Because remember they were watching
probably.
the news. I don't remember.
That movie was not good.
So I think you could start to see that in Lady in the Water, where he wrote a huge part for himself. He's a writer, and his work was supposed to save the world or something like that. And so people start to wonder, is this how he sees himself? That he's some kind of like, and like, but you know, it's kind of a weird thing where like the press was setting it up to be this young wonder kid who's like a Spielberg for the new age. Like he's a genius. he's amazing. Like, I'm sure that one, feeds your ego, but two, also just set you up to fail because we love to build people up to tear them down.
Well, you literally just read the quote by M. Night Shyamalan where he's like, success, you get it, and then you feel even more pressure to continue to succeed.
Yes.
So sure, it's like feeding into his ego, but then also there's probably something else happening where he's probably getting a lot of anxiety and stress over it.
Yeah.
And then so yeah, he's kind of like painting himself in these more grandiose roles and ways. And yeah, I think I never even know if I like sat down and watched Lady in the Water, but
I've seen a little bit of
I
it.
had like no interest in seeing it really. And then I went back and like watched clips on YouTube, and it's hilarious. Like he's a major character.
I think he's one of the main characters.
One of my friends was talking about it last night. He said that he liked the movie.
When he said that, though, I was a little bit like, really? I haven't seen it, so I can't really say, but I think it's pretty universally known to be not
good.
good.
And then what did he follow up with Lady in the Water?
Then it was The Happening.
Oh.
Which
was a career low for a while. And I think for him, he wishes it was the lowest it ever got in his career. But then he went low. He went low.
So it was The Last Airbender.
The Last Airbender, which was like panned by everyone, just like, and a financial failure also, right?
Huge financial. I think it was very expensive.
It was really expensive.
And it was a beloved piece of IP.
Yeah.
And I found something interesting because I was kind of curious. I wanted to know if like there was any critical articles out there analyzing how like racism might have played a role in M. Night's downfall, because I was kind of curious about that as well. And what actually ended up popping up was apparently M. Night was kind of accused of racism when he created The Last Airbender, because there were many of the hero, and I don't know anything about The Last Airbender as a story, but apparently a lot of the hero characters were Caucasian, and then a lot of the villain characters were Southeast Asian.
Did he come out with that Will Smith movie afterwards, the like After Earth?
Yes, that was 2013. That was 3 years after The Last Airbender.
I like don't think it was quite successful, but it was like the beginning of him trying to find his way back into Hollywood good graces.
What's interesting is Airbender came out in 2010, After Earth 2013, and The Visit 2015. So in reality, it feels like he was like persona non grata for forever, but really he wasn't gone for that long.
No.
And I will say, another thing I admire about M. Night, whether you love him or you hate him or you think his filmmaking is good or bad, he did something really interesting where he had kind of been shoved out of Hollywood because of this big financial failure and a general ill will among critics and audiences. But then he decided to self-finance his next few films, starting with The Visit, and they made a profit each time, and he ended up kind of proving his worth.
Yeah, he could bring an audience. The theater was packed last night.
It
and then
was.
I think a lot of people, even before the movie started, they knew what they were getting into because the Nicole Kidman AMC ad played and people were applauding, and that ad has been out for so long now, and even the people that always applauded, they have stopped applauding. And so to hear people applaud last night, I was like, oh,
this is a crowd.
People are here to watch a popcorn movie, and Trap was very much a popcorn movie. Did we want to talk about like any of the plot points that like stood out to us from Trap?
Yeah, I think we're kind of segueing into the next section, which is just like the movie, the criticism of the movie.
I feel like we go through plots pretty thoroughly, but for this one, I don't really have an interest in doing that. And I feel like a lot of the movie was covered in the trailer.
I actually don't think that's true. Well,
for all the
setup,
concert,
sure.
I feel like all the concert stuff was pretty much setup stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious, like, what are like the highlights that you found in the like concert?
Well, honestly, I think it was just the Josh Hartnett of it all. I think he was so comedic in his role. He really like leaned into this kind of like dopey but hot dad persona who's like charming because he's kind of like guileless or like earnest. But then in reality, like the juxtaposition of that with us having to believe he's like an evil serial killer too, even that kind of just made me laugh. Basically what ends up happening is at the concert, he's trying to constantly find a way. All the cops are there, they're surrounding it, no one's gonna be able to leave. He's constantly looking for a way out, being creative. There's like a psychological profiler played by Haley Mills around kind of telling the police like what to look for, and he's stolen a walkie-talkie, so he's able to sort of hear what they're doing and kind of adjust his plans accordingly. The only person who's not going to get checked by the police is the Salika, the Lady Raven, the singer, and her entourage. So he kind of pulls her into a side room and is like, thanks so much for like letting my daughter come up on stage. By the way, I'm an evil murderer. Here's an image of my victim. By the way, if I push this button, carbon monoxide will fill the room and he'll die. So you have to either help me escape or I'm going to kill him and it'll be your fault. And so then he gets to leave with her. And then in the limousine, she's shown to be a sharp, quick thinker as well, and is like, show me your house, Riley. And so then they go to his house, and it's kind of a game of who's going to be able to best the other, and just does the family know what's really going on. And then the cops show up.
I like how I was like, tell me some highlights. And you are like telling the entire movie. So just to give some commentary on like the things that Allison has mentioned, I think good storytelling is you like plant the seed on things.
Yeah.
When they come up later in the movie, it doesn't feel so random. And I feel like this movie did not plant a lot of seeds, and a lot of things come up at random. So one of the surprising factors is, at this concert that Lady Raven is performing at, it's just a whole big setup to capture this serial killer.
Yeah.
And you don't really know like the logistics of like who is setting this up, why it's happened. We see Haley Mills as like the psychology doctor that's the one organizing all this, and she seems to be the one that's, leading all of this. But then it turns out that like Lady Raven is actually like very involved too. Like she wanted this to happen to create the trap at her concert. So much so that she like meets up with Haley Mills to like check in on like what's the progress on capturing
You still
this
haven't
serial
found him
killer.
yet?
There's no mention really of the mom,
Played by Allison Pill.
but then she becomes like a major character in the second half of the movie.
And I feel like they must have cut out a scene in the beginning.
And then there's like this like story too of like Riley had made this like special pie, and the mom's like, well, we have to have a last slice of pie before
you murder me.
It's just like, okay, all these things are very random, and then like Josh Hartnett's eating the pie, and then
It's drugged.
It's
She's
drugged.
used his own drugs.
She's like, I saw it when you had left it behind, and then it like shows the shot of the pills, but it's like they never had shown that
Explained it.
earlier in the movie, so it's like this is all just like like you're just like pulling stuff out of your ass. Like this, I don't know how.
You're just cramming in a lot of info.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of info dump, and then too, it's like where we like compliment so much of Salika's, singing and her involvement and how sweet her relationship was with her father in real life. In the movie, like she just doesn't quite have the acting chops in addition to be like a performer on the stage. She's actually like required to give some very emotional performances and be this pop star trying to capture the serial killer. But what does she think she can do? There's a really cheesy scene where she gets locked in a bathroom and she goes onto social media and is like frantically trying to get fans to
save the
help
man
her
who's
save
locked
the
up.
man. At that point, it was just like so overdone.
The scene went on for too long. That
Overdone.
was the problem. I think.
Yeah,
I
and
think
it's
it
just
should have been
like-
quicker. Because also that Josh Hartnett is gigantic. There's no way he could have broken down the door.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated that part because you could see on the live stream that she was on all the little comments, and they were trying to find. She's like, this man told me that he's near a house with a blue door, near like a half broken lion statue, and then everybody's like commenting. Like in the Philly, New Jersey area, they're mentioning different like Philly, New Jersey neighborhoods. I'm like, I know where that is. So it's kind of fun for me.
A lot of people were just like, I'm seeing your concert next week. And then another person would be like, she looks really scared. And they'd be like, I can't wait. I'm going with my sister next week. She looks really frightened. What's happening with Lady Raven? Props to the person who had to write all the comments for that social media clip.
And then so the thematic point of this movie, the mom, Beth, her husband, he says, I'm here to kill you for a different reason than usual. And I'm full of rage. And it feels so good because he is a person who has no feelings. And the only person who ever noticed something was wrong with him, apparently, was his mother, who he had a strange relationship with, who was cruel to him, who noticed something was off about him. And he's never gotten over it. And he kind of believes he's like a monster, someone who doesn't have any feelings. And he thought he was pretending to have this family life. But in reality, he's come to see that he's so angry at his wife because he loves his children. And he doesn't want to, he's like, I'll never see them again. And I won't get to see them grow up. And that's your fault. But it makes me feel good. I'm mad, but it makes me feel good because he knows that his love for them is real. Which I thought was actually really an interesting idea.
Yeah,
but
just like so much had happened in this movie. Like I was not getting that at all. So many times where I thought it was like coming to an end, and then like Josh Hartnett's character escapes once again.
Yeah. Most hilariously, my favorite escape of Cooper / Josh Hartnett's was Lady Raven locks herself in the bathroom. Cooper goes kind of crazy. And then he gets in somehow, and he kind of is like, okay, we're leaving. And he tries to get her to go into the car, and this really stupid thing happens where she tries to impersonate like a critical mother to try and psychologically get under his skin, and it was just
That was the one time I
effective.
cringed in
Yes,
this movie.
it was
The one
very
only
effective.
time, which is good.
But yeah,
So only cringe once.
one cringe. We should rate movies by cringes.
And it's just hard too because like she quite isn't there with her acting chops yet, and she's playing off Josh Hartnett, who's just much more experienced
And great.
But with that to say, like Riley, who was 13 at the time, could handle playing off Josh Hartnett.
What ends up happening is they open the garage and his family's there, and he's kind of stunned by that. And then Lady Raven uses it as her chance to get out of the car.
But then what's his line where he's like,
This is my favorite part, actually.
it's
I
a
was
very
laughing.
M. Night Shyamalan move to be like, the audience will understand how the family got out.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
like Josh Hartnett has to say like, of course, there's a window in the room that I locked them in and they must have climbed down the tree. And then what was
He
the
goes,
thing about the
I
two
wasn't
people
thinking
split?
clearly. My two lives, I always keep them separate. Like, he's never had to use his serial killer brain on his family, so he like made a mistake.
And it was just like,
It
what
was
is
like,
going on?
I think we could have just accepted that they were outside.
they're
You know,
outside,
they didn't
yeah.
really need it. But that leads to my next favorite part. Their family's like, they're like leaving, and he goes, Riley, you and your friends all gonna be okay. And then he goes to the mom, and he's like, and Rebecca or whatever her name was.
Oh, the boiler guy comes on Monday. Don't let him swindle you. It's totally fine. Don't let him.
Don't let them make you buy another one. It's a scam.
Yeah.
And then he tells his like son, make sure you do your science homework.
Yeah.
And he's just like saying these like really banal things as his like goodbye, which was cracking me up. And then the garage door starts to close on him, and just so you can see his like lower body. It was like really like, hilarious.
What was happening? Why couldn't he exit?
The police were starting to arrive, so he just was closing the garage
Right.
door. And I thought he was going to kill himself because he had said something
About
to
a murder-suicide.
And so it kind
And
of
Lady
set up
Raven
the
has just come off a
expectation.
3-hour concert. And now she has to deal with a serial killer. It is still daylight, by the way. There's been a full 3-hour concert in a stadium. There's still light outside. And there'll still be more light.
Well, you know
to come.
Pennsylvania. It's just a sunny, sunny place. My favorite escape artist trick here is that you think he's going to kill himself. And then Lady Raven's like waiting in the car. And then someone gets in the car. Her driver's like, I'm gonna take you away from here. And the car pulls off. And it was right at that moment I kind of realized what happened. And then they like, the police are inside. And they're like, he had a secret tunnel under his house. And they cut to the pantry. And there's like a hole in the wall. And he's slipped underneath. He's somehow stolen SWAT gear, which they've set up throughout the movie. He's like good at stealing items and getting into costume quickly to hide, but he's the driver and he's taking her away, and I thought that was quite fun.
Which there were moments where he was acting so goddamn suspicious in the stadium. The first one is when he steals the pass from the merchandise guy.
Yeah.
And then he goes into the break room and there's all of like the police in there.
I kind of liked that part.
And Josh Hartnett walks in. He's the only non-policeman there. And I'm like, oh, is he going to try to hide? No, he just like stands there.
But I kind of bought that. Like, if you're a serial killer.
But like when they turn around and be like, who are you?
Yeah, but I feel like, you know how there's that like the killer
Like,
always turns
the
up at the scene of the
boldness,
crime?
yeah.
It's like that is how a killer would be.
And then he like pushes through and he's like really like suave with like the coffee. And someone asks for the sugar. He's like, oh, you know, this guy was supposed to replace it. Here's my secret stash. I was like, that was like smooth.
And then he's like, do you want any donuts?
Want any donuts? Yeah. And Allison Pill makes a comment later on. That's what ticked her off, that he's like actually much more psychopathic than she realized, is he was able to say a lie so easily and it came so
A
naturally
neighbor
to him.
popped up out of nowhere. It was like, come to our black party. And they didn't want to go. And he like came up with a lie immediately.
Yeah.
And she was like,
And there was another time where you put canola oil in like the French fry.
I guess to create a bomb.
It was to create like a diversion.
Yeah.
He puts items in a deep fryer that would like blow up and like distract people. But the woman that works at this like cheeseburger place, they show her like look over at the deep fryer. We see the oil in the deep fryer, implying that she's like been staring at it like with wide eyes, and she like reacts before it even cuts to it. And then it does like a wide shot and it still hasn't exploded yet. This woman has had plenty of time to know that she's in immense danger, but chooses to stand there until it explodes and blows up in her face and then scolds and probably blinds her.
I'm going to be honest though. I don't know the science behind what was going on there. And if I were that woman, I would have been like, what do I do?
She works there. I guarantee they went through a food handling procedure to let you know that deep fryers are very dangerous. And if you saw that, you'd know to get the fuck out of there.
Well,
And then she gets scolded. And one of the more haunting images of the movie, it shows a wide shot of her like freaking out on the gurney, like her face scolded. And it shows a wide shot. There's like now like nobody in the stadium. It's just like her on the gurney. And then the haunting image of Josh Hartnett's mother.
Yes.
Who every now and then kind of pops up as a
it's like a
phantom.
fun little ghost.
They didn't quite pull off the whole ghost effect though.
No.
It felt a little
No.
out of left field. But yeah, that was ridiculous. And then also like Josh Hartnett pops up on the rooftop.
I loved that part too. But
And
there
that's
was a
like-
question I had about that part.
What's that?
He's up on the roof. I think he thinks that no one's going to be up there, but of course there's police presence up there too. And he's wearing the apron that he stole from the kitchen area. I'm like, what are you doing up here? And he's very smooth on his feet, and he knows the code word that he's for the staff needs to have. He's gotten it from somebody else. And then they say, but do you have the little card that we gave you at the presentation. And then he goes into his wallet, and it's the man who was kidnapped. It was his wallet?
No. I think it was just a random employee.
The picture was an Asian man.
There could be more than one Asian man in that movie.
I know, but I guess it looked like the man who was kidnapped. So
it was like
thinking,
a kid. It was like a kid. It was like a teenage kid.
See, I was
so he just stole the
thinking-
apron from the place.
And he had the little
And then
card.
he knew if I have the wallet, then the
That's
guy
so
probably has the
smart.
card.
I was thinking that there was going to be some reveal where the man who was kidnapped, the reason he even was able to go to the concert was because he like kidnapped a man who worked for the concert and got special tickets.
Yeah.
But
Another big
well.
laugh from the movie is Allison Pill, after she discovers that her husband is confirmed to be the butcher. She asks Haley Mills for FBI footage of him capturing the most recent victim. And it cuts to like CCTV footage. And the van just pulls up. And the guy like walks outside. He's walking up to the van like kind of suspiciously. And there's like a pause. And all of a sudden a hand comes out and he takes the guy into the van.
It was so comical because he does look a little bit like uneasy. And I think he said to Lady Raven, I was supposed to be helping this man with his car. So I think he's like trying to be like, should I help this guy? And then just this hand, but it's like really slow. Like it like reaches out and then grabs him almost like.
No, I don't think it was slow. What made it so funny is because how quick it was. He like reached out and grabbed.
Oh, I
think there was even a little bit of a jump cut they had to do to make it even faster.
It was really funny.
The second half of the movie had more problems,
it
but
was
it's more
comedic.
fun to talk about.
Oh.
Just because it's so almost out of left field. Like Lady Raven's more involved than you even imagined. Like Allison Pill's really involved. Haley Mills, this like mysterious psychologist who like feels like she's like in a much more serious movie than she's in.
Well, they always would cut to her and she would be kind of like on her own
In
the
mystery.
shot, which was hilarious.
And it would always be kind of like from like an angle, like you never saw quite like the front of her face.
Yeah.
And then so it's like, oh, who's this actor? Then when you see like her front face, it's like, who is this actor?
But wait.
And then Allison leaned into me. She's like, that's the girl from The Parent Trap.
The original Parent Trap.
And I was like, Lindsay Lohan. She's aged quite a bit.
Apparently M. Night went to her specifically and I was like, why? But then they pointed out that she was in The Parent Trap.
Yeah.
And so this movie is Trap, and
That
it's
was
about a parent
hilarious,
who's
yeah.
trapped between his normal life and his serial killer life. And so how clever to cast her.
So yeah, it's surprising to find out that Haley Mills, the young girl from The Parent
I
Trap,
loved that version of The Parent Trap.
pops up
PS.
in Trap as this psychologist character who's hunting down a serial killer. But she was in The Parent Trap 2.
Oh.
So I wouldn't be surprised if she were to be in, I don't know, Trap 2 or maybe another M. Night Shyamalan universe movie.
I believe it. So at the end, he's kidnapped. He thinks he's been drugged by his wife. He's walking toward the door. He is gigantic. He is a man. He's a dude. He looks intimidating.
He's shirtless for a good 20 minutes of it.
Physically, he fit the role for sure. Like I was definitely like intimidated by, like if I were to be there in that room with this man, even though he's drugged, he's a serial killer, I'd be scared. Like he thinks that he's talking to his mom, and the mom's saying, "See, you did really love your children. You are normal. This is the perfect end for you. The monster can die now. I always like you are my son." And he's like, "Yes, yes, yes." But really, it's Haley Mills standing in the doorway talking to him, and then there are police on either side of the living room, revealing that the wife has once again set him up. And they start tasing him, and he like won't go down because he's so physically imposing, and then he gouges out one of the police officers' eyes.
That was like unnecessarily
I was
violent.
like, oh my gosh.
Someone on Reddit commented, they're like, when I saw that it took 3 tasers to bring him down, that they were worried that it was going to be tied to the superhero universe
I thought
by
that
M. Night
too.
Shyamalan. It
Could be.
Could be.
I think it will be. But then, yeah, he gets outside and he begs them to, before he's now in handcuffs, before they put him in the car, he goes, wait. And then the wife's on the porch going, don't kill him. And he's picking up his daughter's bike and hugging it goodbye because he knows he's never going to see his children again, even though the daughter shows up just in time to give him a hug.
Mm-hmm.
But then cut to him in the back of the police car where there's no one watching him, which, you know, I feel like there should be. And it's revealed that he's stolen a spoke of the bike, and they cut back to the bike so he can undo his handcuffs, and it ends with him smiling. The bike is kind of this dual symbol where it's a symbol for his love for his daughter. He's hugging the bike goodbye, but then it's also the key to him escaping and continuing to be the bad man that he is. And so you get to kind of question, he thinks his love is real, but is it? Like psychologically, I do find that interesting.
Right.
It's real, and yet actually what was going on was he was stealing the spoke. So it's kind of, again, bringing that question to your mind of, is this man actually capable of love? is that part real, or is he just an empty, you know, evil vacuum that is just trying to survive and continue his evil ways? And I quite like that as a...
He's an empty evil vacuum.
I mean, yeah, but I like how they set that up. Anyway, moving on to what is probably the most queer part of this episode of Queer Cinema Catchup, and that is Josh Hartnett.
I think that Josh Hartnett continues to be a very attractive man.
Yeah.
I think he's beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
And when he was shirtless, it was a nice treat for the eyes. Allison
Okay.
thinks that Josh Hartnett has aged poorly. And on top of that, all of our friends, she loves to talk to them how ugly Josh Hartnett is. And when they also agree with her, I hear all the time, she's like, I can't wait to tell Joe that you agree with me, that you agree that Josh Hartnett's ugly.
Wait, I'll take
and I was
that.
like, I don't need to get confirmation from other people in my thoughts. I'm confident that I find him attractive, and I don't need to gather everyone around me to convince you that he's attractive.
Wait,
I find him attractive. If you don't find him attractive, that's fine, but you're wrong.
I'm going to walk it back a little
And
bit.
here's why.
I'm going to walk it back a little bit and say...
Amazing pecs, amazing eyes, amazing hair,
His
amazing
haircut-
personality, charming, funny, serial killer, mystery.
I'll take it back. In the film, like when he was actually on camera, he is very attractive. It's more like in the pictures of him, he just looks like a little like stiff in a way that like is weird to me. But yes, I did ask a lot of other women who agreed with me. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm not really saying anything.
You need to, I want you to come up with a conclusion.
A conclusion? Okay, well, I do have something interesting to say, which is that after the movie, our friend found an article from Vulture that's actually from 2020 that said, was Josh Hartnett a millennial gay root? An investigation. And so...
A gay root?
A gay root, like an
Oh,
origin
route.
story. No, root.
A gay root?
I mean,
like a
both
tree
could
root?
work. Like the root of your queerness becoming a tree.
My queerness is not a tree.
Okay, that's fine. Don't have to be.
My
It could be a bush.
queerness
It could be...
is a never-ending road.
Okay, I like root too. Okay, root to queerness, whatever you want
Well,
to
now
call
that you
it.
mentioned, I kind of like the tree. Go back to the root.
This article reminded me that in Happiest Season, Clea Duvall's holiday queer romance starring Kristen Stewart and Mackenzie Davis, there's a part early in the movie where they show up at one of the women, Harper's home, and the parents don't know that she's queer, and they don't know that Kristen Stewart is her girlfriend, and they're showing her her old childhood room, and there's a picture of Josh Hartnett on the back of the closet door. And Kristen Stewart says something like, wow, like kind of laughing at her girlfriend secretly in front of everybody else, in front of her mom and sister. And their sister goes, I know, right? Is it hot in here? Is it just him? And she kind of like gets close to the poster. And so basically this article was exploring whether Josh Hartnett, who is, when he was young, a very beautiful man.
And continues to be a beautiful man.
Like whether or not he was kind of a queer lady, kind of like, did queer lady gravitate toward him because he's so beautiful, like as a man? As kind of an easy crush to have because there's like a feminine quality to him. And now I would say he doesn't really have that feminine quality that's kind of been lost as he has gotten older and he's more kind of masculine.
But maybe like a feminine quality, but just kind of like a
soft
conventional attractiveness to him.
Maybe. Yeah. I just think he's got beautiful hair. He's got soft, beautiful features when he was a youthful man.
Because he also looks like the guy who played Thanos. Not when he's in Thanos. Who's that actor's name?
Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin, like that kind of quality.
I guess so. Yeah.
And Christian Bale, all of them when they were like in their early 20s kind of had like a similar look.
Yeah.
Of just like conventionally attractive white guys with brown hair.
Yeah, brown-haired men.
Also, I'm not really fixated on hair. Allison has a big hair fetish.
Okay. Don't say that. Allison likes hair. Hair is great. Hair is beautiful.
She loves hair. In this movie Trap, there was a woman with gorgeous hair that I could not stop staring at. It was like shiny and like bouncy.
That's perfect.
In a way that I've never seen before. And then also she just had a really charming energy that
she was
just
the,
elevated the hair even more.
She's kind of like the stage manager who was helping Riley and Cooper while they're backstage waiting for Lady Raven to bring Riley up on stage and then like let them stay backstage. And it was just so funny because there was one part where he's like, hey, after this is over, can we just get to our car via backstage? And she's like, oh my gosh, of course. And she just had this very like warm, competent energy that was quite fun. And she was being duped. But I would have liked a version where she kind of maybe caught on to him a little bit because she seemed like the type who maybe could suss him out.
I would have been much more, and I believe that her acting could have pulled off better everything that Lady Raven was supposed to do. I wish that she was involved. I wish she was like the one getting like realizing everything that was happening.
That would have been great. Got in the car, went back to the house. And they would have been more, since they're closer in age, that would have made it more mature, like a more cat and mouse.
And she probably could have had a more
motherly,
not to say that, motherly, but also kind of like, because she's not a young girl like Lady Raven, like she might suffer like a tragic ending. And then you could also play with the idea of like the difference between like Allison Pill, the wife that he chose to marry, and then this other woman.
Absolutely.
And then there could have been something there too. And also like the different levels of how men see women or how women are seen in society, like the mother, the wife, like the difference between the two, and playing with that, the Madonna, the whore, that kind of idea.
Totally.
I would have been really
genius, Joe, genius. And that brings me to something I wanted to mention earlier that I didn't say. They described this on Wikipedia as a psychological horror film.
It was not psychological.
They talked about psychology.
They talked about psychology.
But what you just described is a psychological horror film.
Yeah, it's like they tried, like in the second half of the movie, they wanted to do that, but it was just like too late. And again, you got to set up the breadcrumbs there if you want to have like the psychology. You can't just be like telling you can't be telling the audience that this stuff is happening. Like there has to be more subtext to it to allow the audience to kind of like do their own thinking.
Yeah, for example, Josh Hartnett, Cooper can't say out loud, I don't know what drives me to kill, but I think it's when I see someone who seems whole. Because that's wrong. None of us are whole. All of us are in pieces.
Yeah.
P.S. Yes, I do chop people up into little pieces. It's like, all right, can we be a little bit more subtle?
The answer, no. Okay, back to Josh Hartnett and Claire Duvall.
Yes. We should also just talk about how he was so funny. I know we've talked about it.
Yeah, like he's really funny.
He won me over. He was so charming. And I do think that this movie really is a comedy at the end of the day. And I do have a quote from M. Night about the comedy that I'll read. I can't be more joyous than I am or pretend to be dark when I'm not. So Trap is a little mischievous. That was the space I was in as I wrote it. And I hope audiences feel that.
It's a little mischievous.
I feel like it is, It like,
is mischievous.
He's just like joking around.
That's what I love about M. Night Shyamalan is I feel like to be able to survive being so publicly shamed by The Last Airbender, Lady in the Water, like to kind of have that fall, but like still like rise up and continue to make movies because he's just so passionate about it that he's, as you said, was like self-financing his movie until he was back in good graces. Yes. Like so powerful. I feel like he like kind of like learned from that, and it's like, because it's hard to like get negative feedback about yourself and then choose to like to first like to listen to it in the first place and then like evolve from that. And I feel like he's
but
just
also to not change that much.
Change. Yeah, he still is true to himself, which I love so much. And I think you can tie it in with his cameo appearances. His cameo in this movie
was pretty good.
I thought it was so well acted. Really it was really good. It felt so natural.
He's playing her uncle, Lady Raven's uncle,
who has weight and getting backstage passes for the dream daughter. Girl that can go up on stage to dance with Lady Raven. Yeah, which was another like wonderful scene.
Yeah, his acting was really good because it's a little unbelievable that he was able to find that man in the crowd. 1, 2, make up a lie about his daughter having leukemia. That you look at that girl, she doesn't look ill. I don't know if I would buy it. And just to be so easy for them to get up on stage. I feel like in another universe, I would watch that scene and kind of roll my eyes, but I didn't. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go along with this. And I think it's because M. Night was just so believable a little bit. And Josh also was pretty believable.
Also, there was another ridiculous part. Lady Raven, a song that she has that features another artist. And she's like, if everyone says it at the count of 3,
Parker,
Riley and Cooper are on the like stadium floor, like in the middle aisle, the floor opens up.
Yeah.
And the artist pops out. Massive hazard.
Totally.
There's like no security. Like people could just accidentally fall into this trap door. It's really dangerous.
But his plan to go down there, he's trying to convince his daughter to go down there, and she's like, Dad, you're being really weird. No.
But at that point, like, why didn't
he just go by himself? Go in? Well, I think that captures that he's torn between actually trying to be there for his daughter and wanting to escape. It's like these two worlds are colliding and he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, which was interesting, but that element like wasn't quite pulled off.
Yeah, because it's kind of...
I was still enjoying the ride.
But also I think that would have been a bad plan to go under there because they would have noticed immediately. They would know you're the bad guy and they would descend upon you. So I actually think that was really stupid. I'm glad his daughter didn't let him do that because there'd be no movie. But yeah, any last thoughts on the Josh Hartnett queer angle of it all?
While I do think he's like really attractive, like if I were to like look back into like guys from the 90s that I found, well, I can't even think in my mind who like sticks out of my mind. I feel like everyone goes to like Leonardo DiCaprio's like the it boy of the
boy.
90s.
This article from Vulture was written pretty tongue-in-cheek. She decided to do an investigation, so she pulled all her lesbian friends, she pulled all her gay male friends, and then she pulled her straight fans. And most of the gay men she asked were like, oh, no, he didn't really do it for me. Or like one person was like, yeah, I really liked him in Pearl Harbor. And then all the lesbian fans were like, yes, we loved him. And I forget what the straight people said, but it was very jokey. And she's like, this is not, because she only pulled like 10 people that she knows. But I thought maybe there's something there.
What was the queer women's response?
That they liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While I do think he's like attractive, I like don't.
Do you feel like now
obsessive
though
over
he's
him.
more attractive to you than he was then?
Yeah.
And that's what I think is what's actually happening when we joke about this is that like, I think when he was young, he was so beautiful. And now he's kind of more like masculine.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going on.
And a psycho.
And a psycho. There was a couple reviews. Unlike Me and Joe, a lot of critics didn't like this movie. It's got a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes. Benjamin Lee of The Guardian gave it 2 out of 5 stars, said Trap is a thriller that incorrectly thinks it's fiendishly smart. Maybe if it was more aware of how stupid it actually is, it might have been a lot more fun, which I totally disagree with. I think it knew exactly.
I think it knew exactly.
I think there were parts he thought were smart that are dumb, but for the most part, it was aware that it was kind of silly.
And I do think like they could have tightened up some parts towards the end. Because
Yes.
it's supposed to be like he's supposed to keep like continuing to escape all these new traps that are
Which
set
is
up.
hilarious.
Like the escalating traps like weren't quite escalating. They weren't saying anything new.
No. There was one kind of critical lens that I really thought was very smart. Richard Brody, he was saying that like what gives this movie more of a kick than does any manifest aspect of it, its tightly assembled and essentially inhuman plot, family life is murder. It's a story of double evasion. He must take surreptitious measures to throw law enforcement off his trail, and he must do so in a way that doesn't break the facade of ordinariness that he sustains for Riley's benefit.
It's never quite
They don't quite get there.
And you talk about how you like sympathize him in relation to like the father-daughter
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, but the daughter even like disappears for a while.
She
and it's
does.
like doesn't. I also would have been curious if there were some scenes with just like Riley alone and trying to process what's going on.
I agree.
To really make this like
Yeah, I agree.
dynamic work, to really feel
Yeah.
like she's like losing her father.
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting. You raise a good point. They set it at a concert that's supposed to evoke like Swiftie girl culture, and there's this very cute girl that's having bullying problems, or like a fight with her friends is kind of the backdrop of her conflict, but it's not really about girlhood. And there's like a major pop star. It is weird that like that isn't explored thematically really at all when the setup is all there.
Because the whole idea too is like she can see on even the father says at one point like, oh, it must be hard to go on social media and see like you're disconnected from, because there's some falling out that she has with her friend who happens to be at the concert too, seated somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I guess there's like a payoff in the concert where it's when Riley gets pulled on stage.
And she sees her and she like loses her
the
mind.
ex-friend loses her mind, gets really upset, but then she like disappears from the movie. So it's like,
Yeah.
why? Like, that doesn't really connect. And I do think that there might be like deleted scenes from this movie that kind of sets this up more.
I do think that.
And that happens even before they get to the concert, that they just probably saw us too much.
It was already kind of
preamble.
long, so yeah.
But it would have helped kind of establish the setup of the
And it would have taken
second half
advantage
the
of
movie.
something that I think is pretty unique to kind of have this movie come out alongside a moment where we're very aware of like girl pop culture because of the Eras tour and stuff like that. So,
Oh, wow.
but overall, I had a great time. And
Yeah.
give me your top 3 Shyamalan films.
Signs at the top.
Okay.
Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe it's just because it's recency biasy, but Trap.
Unfortunately, mine are the same. I might put The Sixth Sense first just because it's just such a great movie. And he's never made a movie like that again. So sincere, scary, and moving.
Why hasn't Toni Collette been pulled into the M. Night Shyamalan universe?
She's too serious of an actor now, I think. I think he's gravitating toward like the Josh Hartnetts, the Haley Mills, the people that you pointed this out.
We talked a little bit about
Yeah.
how there's a lot of good performances in this movie. And even Salika, she's doing her best, and it's still a really fun ride.
It
so
is. I enjoyed every second of it. I'm not gonna
Trap, in our opinion,
lie. A plus plus plus, but really more of a B minus, but technically it's an A.
I almost forgot before we signed off. M. Night Shyamalan, we say, is a holiday, so it should be a celebration.
Yeah, that's so true.
And we just started doing video podcasts. I got this in mind. Confetti cannons.
Yeah.
Here's yours.
Wait, what if we do 3, 2, 1, M. Night?
Well, we should be like
Shyamalan
M. Night,
forever.
Shyamalan forever.
Shyamalan forever. 3, 2, 1.
One.
Shyamalan forever.
Oh my God. Queer Cinema Catchup is a podcast where we talk about movies, television, and miscellaneous topics through a queer lens.
Thank you to our 250 subscribers. We love you. Thank you to our podcast listeners. Please email us at queercinemacatchup@gmail.com.
This was our episode on Trap.
Shyamalan forever.
Shyamalan forever. Oh my gosh.